The celestial spire rose above Neoterra like a blade of glass and silver, piercing the clouds and shimmering against the violet horizon. From its highest tower, where gravity was softened by magnetic stabilizers, the galaxy stretched outward in endless light. It was here, in the Hall of Radiance, that the Aureline dynasty displayed its splendor and its heir. Princess Christy Aureline stood before the gathered court, draped in a gown of living fabric that shimmered with threads of starlight. Her beauty was legend, hair the color of midnight silk, eyes like twin sapphires flecked with gold, a face both regal and delicate. The courtiers adored her with polite bows and whispered praise, yet their admiration felt like chains. She smiled, as protocol demanded, but inside she felt only the weight of expectation pressing against her heart. The emperor, her father, spoke of treaties and alliances, his voice echoing through the crystalline chamber. Christy's name was mentioned often, too often, always tied to one phrase: the future of the dynasty. She knew what that meant: marriage. A union chosen not by love, but by strategy. Her gaze drifted across the hall to Duke Kaelen Vaynar, standing tall in the gilded shadows of the throne's edge. He was striking, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in midnight blue armor trimmed with silver. His smile was charming, calculated, but his eyes told a different story: ambition, cold and sharp as a blade. Christy knew he wanted her hand, not for her, but for the crown she would one day wear. Kaelen raised a glass toward her, a silent toast. The gesture seemed warm, but it made her skin prickle. He was already staking his claim. Christy lowered her eyes, concealing her unease. The court could never know that behind her perfect composure, her soul longed for something more: for freedom, for truth, for love unshackled by power. Yet here she was, a jewel locked in a golden cage. Later, as the ceremony ended and the courtiers dispersed, Christy lingered near the towering windows. Beyond the atmosphere shields, stars glittered in the black sea of space. She pressed her hand against the glass as though she could reach them. If only I could escape, just once. "Your Highness," came a smooth voice behind her. Christy turned. Kaelen stood closer now, his smile gentle, but his presence overwhelming. "You carry yourself like the stars themselves," he said softly, almost too softly. "One day you and I will guide this dynasty together. I look forward to that future." His words were dressed in velvet, but Christy heard the steel beneath them. She forced a smile. "As does the dynasty, I'm sure," she replied. Kaelen bowed, but his gaze lingered too long, and when he finally turned away, Christy exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Alone again, she whispered to the stars beyond the glass, "Someone, somewhere, and tell me this isn't all there is." And as if the cosmos heard her plea, destiny began to stir, hidden in the shadows of the spire, waiting to change everything. The private council chamber of the Aureline family was a place few ever entered. Its walls were made of obsidian crystal, humming faintly with energy drawn from the planetary core. Here, secrets of the dynasty had been spoken for centuries. Secrets that shaped empires, started wars, and silenced rebellions before they were ever born. Princess Christy Aureline sat at the long table beside her father, the Emperor, and her stepmother, Empress Solara. Their robes shimmered with the same authority that had once cowed kings and warlords. Christy, dressed in silver silk and a circlet of sapphire, looked every inch the dutiful daughter. Inside, however, her heart raced like a bird trapped in a sob cage. Her father's voice cut through the silence. "Christy," he began, folding his hands, "the court has waited long enough. The future of our dynasty cannot remain uncertain." She knew what was coming. Her palms grew cold against the polished table. "The Duke of Venar has proven himself time and again," the Emperor continued. "He is powerful, loyal, and commands the fleet. Your union with him will secure our hold over the colonies and present an unbreakable image of stability." Christy kept her chin high, her eyes steady on her father's, though her heart twisted. Unbreakable image, stability, words spoken like they mattered more than her own soul. "Father," she said carefully, her voice measured but soft, "do you mean to say you've already chosen him as my husband?" The Emperor's gaze sharpened. "Not I, Christy. Duty itself has chosen him for you. This is the burden of the crown. You will learn that sacrifice is the foundation of rule." Empress Solara leaned forward, her jeweled fingers resting on the table. "You must understand, child. Love is fleeting, but alliances endure. Kaelen will keep you safe, and with him the Empire will stand strong. Is that not worth more than a passing fancy of the heart?" The word stung. A passing fancy. Was that all her life was to them? A vessel for alliances? A bargaining chip to secure loyalty? Christy lowered her gaze, fighting the urge to protest. Her silence was mistaken for agreement, and her father gave a satisfied nod. "Good. Then let us prepare the announcement. By the next lunar cycle, the galaxy will celebrate your engagement to Duke Kaelen Venar." The words struck her like chains, snapping shut around her wrists. When the council dismissed, Christy walked swiftly through the mirrored corridors of the spire. Courtiers bowed as she passed, murmuring blessings, their eyes filled with admiration and envy. To them, she was radiant, untouchable. They did not see the turmoil burning inside her chest. She finally slipped into her private chambers, where the golden light of dusk poured in through tall windows. Only here could she shed her mask. Her handmaiden and closest confidant, Marielle, entered quietly carrying a tray of nectar wine. "Your Highness," Marielle said softly, setting the tray down. But when she saw Christy's expression, her brow furrowed. "You look as though your heart has been locked away." Christy sat on the edge of her bed, her gown pooling around her like liquid silver. She let the words tumble out in a whisper. "They've bound me to Kaelen. Father calls it duty. Stepmother calls it safety. But I call it a prison." Marielle knelt beside her, taking her hand. "Princess, you must be careful. Speak those thoughts aloud in the wrong ear, and they'll be twisted into daggers against you. Every corridor here has ears." Christy's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. "Am I nothing but a symbol, Marielle? A pretty cage bird to be displayed while others decide my fate?" Marielle's grip tightened. "You are more than they know, but if you are to break these chains, you must tread with caution. Sometimes freedom comes not with open defiance, but with secrets carefully kept." Christy looked past her friend to the glowing horizon. Stars were beginning to pierce the dusk, their light soft yet eternal. In their glow she imagined another life, one where her choices were her own, where her heart did not belong to a throne. "I don't want Kaelen," she whispered fiercely, almost to herself. "I want something real, someone real." Marielle said nothing, but in her silence was understanding. She poured a cup of nectar wine and handed it to Christy, who accepted it with trembling fingers. As the night deepened and the palace outside filled with the music of banquets and laughter, Princess Christy sat alone in her chamber, her golden chains invisible, but no less binding. She did not know it yet, but destiny had already set in motion a meeting that would change everything. The royal gardens of the celestial spire were unlike any on earth. Suspended hundreds of stories above Neoterra, they floated within domes of shimmering glass, where bioluminescent flora from across the galaxy thrived in carefully tuned ecosystems. Trees from the Jovian moons glowed faintly with blue light. Martian roses, engineered to bloom in thin air, opened crimson petals under the artificial suns. Streams of silver water wound through the pathways and the soft hum of anti-gravity. Crystals kept it all in balance. It was Christy's sanctuary. She slipped through the hidden archways with only Marielle trailing behind until even her handmaiden's footsteps faded. Alone at last, Christy removed the jeweled circlet from her brow and let her hair fall loose. Here, the court's eyes could not follow her. Here, she could breathe. She wandered past cascading vines, her fingertips brushing over leaves that pulsed faintly with light. Her heart was heavy with the weight of her father's decree, but the beauty around her felt like a secret rebellion. Amid the stars, at least nature still whispered of freedom. That was when she heard it, an unfamiliar voice, low and edged with frustration. "Damn thing won't calibrate." Christy paused, startled. No one should have been here. She followed the sound and found a man crouched near one of the irrigation conduits, his hands buried in a cluster of wires and glowing sensors. He was not dressed as a noble. His dark tunic was simple, sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms, smudged with grease. His hair was unruly, a dark copper that caught the light of the garden lamps. When he looked up, his eyes caught her breath, storm gray, piercing, yet alive, with something raw and unrefined. For a moment, he seemed just as startled to see her. Then, without bowing or stumbling over honorifics, he simply muttered, "You shouldn't be here." Christy blinked, almost amused. "These are my gardens." The man's lips curved into a half-smile, not of mockery but of challenge. "Then you might want to know one of your filtration valves was about to rupture. Would have flooded the orchids. Not that anyone in your court would have noticed." No one spoke to her this way. Courtiers wrapped their words in silks, polished every sentence to please her. But this man, whoever he was, spoke plainly, without fear. "And you are—" she asked, her tone cool but curious. "Auric," he said after a pause, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Maintenance crew. From Mars. Mars. The colonies." That explained the accent in his voice, a harder edge shaped by life far from Earth's luxuries. Christy tilted her head, studying him. "You seem bold for a gardener," she said. "I'm no gardener," Auric replied, standing now, taller than she expected. "I keep the machines running, so your nobles can pretend these plants grow by miracle." His eyes lingered on her a moment too long, as though he was trying to see the real woman beneath the crown. "Guess I shouldn't be speaking to you at all." "You shouldn't," Christy agreed softly. And yet, she didn't move away. There was a silence then, filled only by the gentle hum of the artificial streams. Christy felt her pulse quicken, though she did not understand why. Auric turned back to the valve, tightening a piece with practiced ease. "There," he murmured. "Fixed. The roses won't drown tonight." Christy surprised herself by smiling. It wasn't the courtly smile she wore like armor, but something warmer, freer. "Then I owe you thanks, Auric of Mars." He glanced at her again, and this time his smile reached his eyes. "Don't thank me, just remember, not everything. In this palace is as perfect as it looks." The words struck her more deeply than he could have known. Before she could reply, footsteps echoed from the corridor beyond. Guards. Christy straightened instantly, placing the circlet back upon her brow. By the time the guards entered the garden, she was every bit the untouchable princess again. "Your Highness," one of them said with a bow, "it's time for your evening meal." Christy nodded, hiding the flicker of disappointment. She glanced once more toward Auric, but he had already turned away, blending into the shadows of the maintenance corridor. As she left, her heart carried a strange, new rhythm. For the first time in her life, someone had spoken to her without deference, without calculation. Someone had seen her not as a crown, but as a person, and though she did not yet know it, that stranger, the man from Mars, would soon become the axis around which her destiny would turn. The halls of the celestial spire never slept. Day and night bled together in a cascade of shifting light panels, keeping the palace awash in artificial dawn. Courtiers drifted like jeweled shadows, exchanging whispers sharper than blades. Every Corridor carried the weight of secrets. Every glance held the potential to destroy. Princess Christy Orlin had learned to walk these halls with poise, her back straight, her smile flawless. Yet beneath her serene exterior, the memory of the stranger in the gardens clung to her like a forbidden melody. Arik. His name alone pulsed through her veins with dangerous sweetness, but others had noticed her distraction. Duke Kaelen Vaynar stood in the Emperor's war chamber, flanked by his officers. He studied the holographic star maps with a commander's calm precision. To anyone else, he appeared focused only on strategy. Yet, when he dismissed the officers and remained alone, a very different expression crossed his face. Cold, calculating, possessive. His spies had reported the princess wandering the gardens, at unusual hours, alone, vulnerable, and not alone for long. Kaelen's jaw tightened. He would not tolerate interlopers, especially not some nameless colonial. He touched a control on his wristband. A small hologram flickered to life, the blurred image of Christy speaking to a man in maintenance garb. No audio, no proof of intimacy, but enough to make Kaelen's blood simmer. "Find him," Kaelen said to the shadowed figure of his agent. "I want every detail of his existence, name, origin, intent. And if he has spoken to her again—" Kaelen's lips curved in a smile devoid of warmth. "Remind him of his place." The agent bowed and vanished into the dark. Later that evening, Christy dined with her family beneath the crystalline chandeliers of the spire. Laughter rose, goblets clinked, but her mind was elsewhere. She moved food across her plate with mechanical grace, hearing only fragments of conversation, her father discussing naval deployments, Solara praising Kaelen's loyalty, courtiers weaving flattery like silk threads. Kaelen himself sat opposite her, eyes gleaming like a predator's in candlelight. He leaned forward slightly, voice smooth as polished steel. "You seemed distracted tonight, Your Highness." Christy met his gaze, masking the sudden quickening of her pulse. "Merely fatigued, Duke. The weight of duty is heavier than most." "Realize," Kaelen smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Perhaps. Still, you must take care. Wandering alone in the gardens at night, the spire can be dangerous in its shadows." The words dripped with false concern, but Christy caught the undertone, a warning. She sipped her wine slowly, never breaking his gaze. "I assure you, Duke, I am never truly alone." It was a lie, but a necessary one. If Kaelen suspected anything, she could not allow him to see the truth written in her eyes. When the banquet ended, Christy retreated once more to her private chambers. Mariel awaited her there, pacing nervously. "My lady," Mariel whispered, closing the door behind them, "you must be cautious. I've overheard things. The Duke has questions about the gardens, questions about you." Christy exhaled, pressing her hand against the cool glass of the window. The stars glowed, endless and free, while she felt trapped. "In a tightening snare, he suspects," Christy murmured, "and Kaelen's suspicions are as dangerous as his armies." Mariel's eyes were wide with fear. "Then you must end this, whatever it is. If there is someone—" Christy turned sharply. "No, I will not live a life chosen for me by Kaelen, by father, or by anyone else. If the Duke thinks he can cage me with threats, he is mistaken." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from resolve. Far below, in the dim maintenance tunnels, Arik wiped sweat from his brow as he repaired a broken power conduit. He did not see the shadow that lingered at the corridor's edge, watching him. The spy smiled faintly and activated his recorder. The web was tightening indeed, and soon every secret Christy guarded would hang by a thread. Rumors in the Celestial. Spire traveled faster than light. They wound through marble corridors and glittering ballrooms like smoke, invisible yet suffocating. One moment they were nothing but murmurs. The next, they were truth carved into the minds of courtiers. Princess. Christy Orlin felt their sting before she even heard them spoken aloud. It began with glances, a pair of attendants who hushed their laughter when she passed. a young noblewoman, once effusive in her compliments, now studying Christy as though weighing her worth. Even the servants, loyal and discreet, moved with unusual silence when they entered her chamber. By the time Christy joined the midday gathering in the Hall of Radiance, the whispers had sharpened. She slips away at night. Sure. Alone in the gardens, they say. Not alone if the rumors are true. Their voices were soft, but Christy's ears, trained by years of courtly pretense, caught every poisoned word. She glided past them in her silver gown, her face serene, her posture regal, as though their words slid off her like water. Yet inside, her heart pounded. Already? How could word spread so quickly? At the far end of the hall, Duke Kaelen Vaynar awaited her. He stood beside Empress Solara, tall and imposing in his military uniform, the gold of his epaulets gleaming beneath the chandeliers. His smile was the kind that could charm a crowd, but his eyes were fixed on Christy with quiet possession. "My lady," Kaelen said smoothly, bowing over her hand. His grip lingered longer than necessary, tightening just enough to make her pulse quicken, not with affection, but with unease. "You look radiant," he continued, his voice pitched so only she could hear. "Though I fear the court's tongues have grown restless, best not to give them reason." Christy met his gaze, her smile flawless, though her words were edged with steel. "And yet, Duke, I find rumors are most often spread by those who need distraction from their own faults." Kaelen chuckled softly, though his eyes narrowed a fraction. "Ah, you wound me, princess. Still, I should hate to see your reputation tarnished by the envy of lesser souls." She withdrew her hand smoothly, her poise unbroken, but every syllable had felt like a game of blades. One slip, and she would bleed. Later, in the sanctuary of her chambers, Christy's composure cracked. She tore the jeweled pins from her hair, letting it spill over her shoulders, and paced like a caged animal. "They know Marielle," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Or at least they suspect." Kaelen's words, the stares in the hall. This is no longer a secret hidden between the roses. Her handmaiden looked pale, wringing her hands. "Then you must be more careful than ever, my lady. The Duke has spies in every shadow. If they catch even a glimpse of—" She hesitated. "Of Arik," Christy finished for her, her heart twisting as she said his name. "He's the reason behind this storm. And yet—" She pressed her palm against her chest as though to still the ache. "I cannot stay away?" Marielle's eyes softened. "I know, but love born in shadows draws daggers. Promise me, Christy, if you see him again, let it be in secret, where no one can follow." Christy nodded, though her resolve faltered even as she gave the promise. Meanwhile, deep in the palace's labyrinthine tunnels, Arik worked tirelessly, unaware of how close the web had drawn around him. The hum of machinery filled the air as he adjusted a power grid, sparks flaring briefly against his hands, but he was not alone. A figure lingered in the shadows, watching, silent as a predator. The Emperor's agent, Kaelen's man, recorded every movement, every expression, filing away details to be delivered at dawn. Arik paused, suddenly frowning. He had the uncanny sensation of being observed. His gaze swept the corridor, sharp and alert, but saw nothing. Only the hum of engines answered him. Still, his instincts whispered danger. That night Christy stood at her window, the galaxy sprawling, endless and indifferent before her. Yet the vastness of the stars did not free her. Every whisper in the hall, every shadow in the corridors, felt like a chain tightening around her heart. She thought of Arik, the way he had spoken to her, not as a princess, but as a woman. His words had been honest, unvarnished, like clear water after a lifetime of bitter wine, and though fear coiled within her, she knew the truth. The more they whispered, the more she longed for him. The night cloaked the celestial spire in a veil of silver-blue shadows. Artificial stars twinkled above, mirrored by the glass domes that stretched across the palace gardens. The world below, the court, the glittering ballrooms, the spies, was distant, as if existing on a separate plane. Only here could Christy breathe without the suffocating weight of gold and expectation pressing against her shoulders. She moved through the garden corridors silently, her silver gown whispering against the floor. Mariel had left her at the secret entry to the observatory, warning once more, "One misstep, Princess, and the Duke will have every reason to act. Be swift, be cautious." Christy nodded, her chest tightening. She knew the risk, but some fires in the heart could not be extinguished. Arik was already there, perched on the edge of the observatory's gravity-stabilized balcony, adjusting the delicate instruments that tracked distant stars and planetary rotations. When he sensed her approach, his head lifted, and for a heartbeat, the universe itself seemed to pause. "Princess," he whispered, a half-smile tugging at his lips, "you really shouldn't risk yourself like this." "And miss this?" Christy stepped onto the balcony, letting the night air mingle with her hair. "I can endure Kaelen, the whispers, the chains of duty, but I cannot endure a life without this." Arik rose, brushing a hand along the railing near hers. The air between them was thick, charged with danger and desire. "You know they would kill me if they discovered this," he murmured. "I know," Christy said softly, her eyes locking onto his. "And yet, it doesn't matter tonight. Tonight, I am not a princess. I am just me." Arik's hand brushed hers, tentative, electric. She let him close the distance, their fingers intertwined, hearts beating in tandem, a rhythm unspoiled by politics or obligation. The observatory was silent, but for the hum of instruments and the distant whir of anti-gravity. Turbiness. Christy leaned forward, resting her forehead against his chest. "I have never felt anything like this," she whispered. "And I know. I shouldn't." Arik tilted her chin up, their eyes meeting. "Nor should I," he admitted, voice low. "But if love is forbidden, that only makes it more necessary." Their lips met, and in that kiss all the burdens of courtly expectation, duty, and whispered rumors faded. The starlight around them seemed to burn brighter, reflecting in Christy's eyes as though the universe itself acknowledged this stolen moment. But even in the sanctuary of love, danger lurked. A faint sound echoed through the observatory, a metallic click from the outer walkway. Arik stiffened, hand instinctively moving to his belt, where a small tool might serve as weapon. Christy's gaze sharpened, heart pounding. "Someone's there," Arik murmured, crouching slightly. Christy nodded. "Hide me," she whispered. Instantly, Arik guided her behind a column of reinforced glass, just as a shadow slipped past. The balcony entrance. It was one of Kaelen's spies, moving with the silent precision of a predator. Their eyes scanned the instruments, then paused, aware of something, yet unable to locate the couple. The spy lingered for a moment longer, then vanished into the shadows, leaving only the echo of their boots and a sense of imminent threat. Christy exhaled, gripping Arik's arm. That was too close. Arik pulled her to him again, protective, fierce. "We can't stay here long. Kaelen is watching, and every move we make is being tracked, but—" He brushed a strand of hair from her face, eyes intense. "I will. Not let anyone harm you. Not the Duke, not the dynasty, not even fate itself." Christy felt a thrill of defiance mixed with fear. "Then we continue," she said, voice trembling, "but cautiously. Each stolen moment will be worth the danger." And so they lingered for a few more precious minutes, tracing the curves of starlight across the balcony, whispering in half-sentences and secrets. The night was theirs, briefly, defiantly, beautifully. When she returned to her chambers later, Christy moved like a shadow, silent but exhilarated. Mariel was waiting, eyes wide, sensing the fire that now burned brighter in her mistress's heart. "You were seen," Mariel said, voice trembling. "I swear it. Kaelen's men, they were—" "Close." Christy smiled faintly, though worry edged her expression. "Let them watch," she murmured. I will not deny what my heart demands. Tonight, the stars themselves bore witness to it. Yet, as she drifted into restless sleep, a thought lingered. For every stolen moment, a danger waited. And Kaelen's web was growing tighter, ready to strike when the time was right. The celestial spire gleamed under the twin moons, its crystal towers reflecting fractured silver light across Neoterra. Inside, the Hall of Radiance was prepared for the midwinter gala, a spectacle meant to display the dynasty's power, beauty, and control over the galaxy. Princess Christy Orlean descended the sweeping staircase, her gown flowing like liquid starlight. Every step was measured, regal, perfect. Yet, beneath her calm, a storm raged. Kaelen had been watching more closely since the gardens. He had begun subtle maneuvers, whispers in her presence, careful suggestions to the court, even a hand placed lightly on hers during introductions, signaling his claim. The court was a sea of gilded figures, murmuring, bowing, and watching. Their eyes flicked between Christy and Kaelen, noting every subtle movement, every exchanged glance. The dance of political theater was more perilous than any battlefield. Kaelen approached her, bowing with deceptive deference. "My lady," he said, voice smooth as polished silver, "you look radiant tonight, as always. I hope the evening will be tolerable." Christy's lips curved into a controlled smile. "It is tolerable, Duke, though some may find it taxing." He smiled, his teeth glinting in the chandelier light, but his eyes were sharp, predatory. "And some may find you distracted. Rumor, after all, travels faster than light." The words were veiled, but Christy caught the edge. He was testing her, prodding her, watching how she would react. Across the room, whispers began. Courtiers spoke in hushed tones, eyes darting between Christy and Kaelen. "Did you see her near the gardens last night?" "She was with someone, a maintenance worker, I hear." "The Duke appears concerned." Christy felt a shiver of unease, but she remained poised, gliding through the crowd like the perfect princess. Each nod, each polite bow, was a shield. Yet inside, her mind raced. Kaelen is setting the stage. Every word, every whisper is part of his design. He wants to corner me publicly, make me appear vulnerable. As the gala continued, Kaelen orchestrated a subtle campaign of attention. He guided courtiers to speak of Christy's distracted mind during council decisions. He suggested to the Empress that the princess might need supervision. He even arranged for the rumor of her garden escapades to reach the ears of influential nobles. All of it was calculated, silent, and effective. Christy's stomach knotted. The court was beginning to doubt her judgment, her composure, even her loyalty to the dynasty. During a brief interlude, Christy excused herself to the observation balcony overlooking the city. The artificial moons reflected off the chrome spires, the galaxy stretching beyond in a cascade of infinite light. She took a breath, letting the cool night air fill her lungs, trying to steady her racing heart. "You're not alone," a familiar voice whispered. Christy turned sharply. Auric emerged from the shadows, his presence as grounding as the earth itself, even here above the clouds. "I should not be here," he said quietly, scanning the gala below. "If anyone sees us—" "I know," Christy interrupted, her voice low but firm. "But I need this. I cannot face him, Kaelen, and the court alone." Auric stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. The contact sent a shiver down her spine. "Then we fight it together," he said. "But we must be cautious. The web is tighter than ever, and Kaelen is weaving every strand himself." Christy swallowed. "Every step I take, every glance, every word, is being watched. Yet still, I will not bend." He smiled faintly, admiration mixed with concern. "Nor should you. But the closer you are to him, the sharper his traps will be. You need a strategy." Christy turned her gaze to the glittering city below, then back to Auric. "I am the princess," she said softly, "but tonight I am also a woman who will not be tamed. No one, not even Kaelen, can claim my heart. The words hung in the air between them, a promise and a challenge. Back inside the hall, Kaelen watched Christy from across the room, his mask of charm unbroken. Beneath it, a storm brewed. He had anticipated resistance, but not the depth of her defiance, nor the quiet fire he glimpsed in her eyes. Every move would need greater precision, every word a weapon, and he would not fail. Not if it meant bending Christy Orlan to his will, if it meant controlling the heart of the dynasty itself. The morning sun barely pierced the reinforced glass of the celestial spire, casting long, cold shadows across the marbled halls. The palace awoke in a muted symphony of whispers, clanging utensils, and the distant hum of gravity stabilizers. Yet beneath the usual bustle, tension pulsed like an invisible current, Kaelen's invisible hand tightening the threads of control around the princess. Princess Christy Oraline entered the council chamber, her silver gown brushing against the floor in a rhythm both graceful and guarded. Eyes followed her, not out of admiration alone, but with the subtle undercurrent of scrutiny Kaelen had nurtured. Whispers rose and fell like waves, and Christy could hear the faintest undertone of accusation beneath the pleasantries. Kaelen sat at the head of the council, his posture impeccable, expression calm. Yet the slight narrowing of his eyes betrayed the predator lurking beneath the polished surface. "Princess Christy," Kaelen began, his voice warm, almost gentle, "I trust your rest was sufficient." "Yes, Duke," she replied smoothly, though the words were measured armor, every syllable weighed, every pause deliberate. He inclined his head slightly, then continued, "I hear the gardens are quite active at night. Curious for one so devoted to courtly duties." Christy's pulse quickened. The spies, she realized instantly. He knows, or at least suspects, more than I dared imagine. "I find inspiration in quiet spaces, Duke," she answered carefully, her tone soft but firm. "And even a princess may walk unseen once in a while." Kaelen's lips curved into a smile, seemingly benign, yet sharpened with calculation. "Indeed. Yet the court does not always see as we do. One must be cautious, lest shadows grow teeth." After the council ended, Christy retreated to her chambers. Marielle, already pacing, looked like a storm about to break. "They've noticed more than you think, Princess," she said, voice low and urgent. "Kaelen has made sure of it. Rumors are no longer idle. They are forming a web. One wrong move, and it will ensnare you." Christy leaned against the window, watching the city below shimmer like a field of stars. "And yet I cannot stop. I cannot stop thinking of him, of Arik. Each stolen moment is worth the risk." Marielle shook her head, despair mingling with worry. "Every risk carries consequences, my lady. You must hide him better, move in shadows, never in light. Kaelen has spies everywhere. He will not miss a step." Christy closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. "Then shadows shall be our allies. We will not be found, at least, not yet." That night Christy descended to the gardens once more, careful, silent. The moonlight glinted off her gown, turning her into a phantom of silver light. Every step was measured, every sound a potential alarm. Arik awaited her, crouched beside a small luminescent pond, adjusting a series of sensors that regulated the garden's atmosphere. When he saw her, relief softened his otherwise stern features. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered, scanning the perimeter. "If Kaelen's men follow, we are both exposed." "I know," Christy said, moving to his side. Her hand brushed against his, the familiar spark of connection sending a shiver through her. "But I cannot stay away, not when the world presses so hard against me." Arik nodded, understanding in his gaze. "Then we must be quicker, more careful. Every shadow is a friend tonight, and every light a threat." They moved along the moonlit pathways, whispering plans, sharing stolen warmth in the chill of danger. But as they turned toward a hidden alcove, a faint movement caught Christy's eye, a ripple of shadow across the garden floor. Her stomach tightened. "Someone's here," she murmured, voice taut. Arik's hand flew to hers, eyes scanning. the darkness. A figure stepped into the dim glow, a spy in the Duke's service, every feature obscured by a hood. The intruder froze, studying the pair, calculating. Christy pressed herself behind Auric, heart hammering. The spy's gaze flickered. To the sensors, then to the pond, then back to them. Every second stretched into eternity. Finally, with a subtle gesture, the intruder vanished into the labyrinth of garden corridors, leaving only the echo of movement and the sharp scent of fear. Christy exhaled slowly, her hand gripping Auric's. "That was too close," she whispered, trembling despite herself. Auric drew her close, protective and fierce. "Kaelen's web is tightening. We cannot linger here long, but know this, no matter the danger, I will not let him claim you, not in this life, not under these stars." Christy's heart swelled with defiance and longing. "Then we continue," she said softly. "Every moment stolen, every shadow crossed. It is worth the risk." Back in his chamber, Kaelen stood before a hollow screen reviewing the garden's surveillance feed. He had seen nothing yet. But he sensed the bond forming, the danger stirring. His lips curved in a thin, calculated smile. "Soon," he murmured, voice low, almost tender in its menace. "Soon even the shadows will obey me." The celestial spire was silent, a deceptive calm settling over the palace. Above, the twin moons shimmered like silver sentinels, casting a cold glow across the gardens and corridors. But the calm was a lie. Every stone, every corridor, every reflected shard of glass hid Kaelen's careful watch. The Duke had begun his game, and all pieces were in motion. Princess Christy Orlane awoke that morning with a sense of unease, the faint prickle of eyes on her back, even in the solitude of her chambers. She dressed carefully, selecting a gown of pale blue that mirrored the heavens outside, a subtle signal to herself of defiance and clarity. Today she would attend the morning council, as expected, but her mind was elsewhere, tangled with thoughts of Auric and the tightening web around them. Kaelen, seated in the war chamber, studied the palace holograms like a grand chessboard. Courtiers and generals shuffled reports, but none dared meet his eyes. He was waiting for the perfect moment, the instant when Christy would be vulnerable and Auric within reach. "Activate the garden surveillance network," he instructed one of his agents, voice smooth, almost casual, "and ensure the observers are discreet. Let her think she is safe. The trap must appear accidental." The agent nodded, bowing low, and vanished into the palace's shadowed corridors. Kaelen leaned back, lips curving into a slow, deliberate smile. "Every secret has a price," he murmured, "and tonight she will learn hers." Christy descended the staircase for council, unaware of the trap forming. Her movements were fluid, elegant, yet every nerve in her body hummed with tension. She had a plan: to use the council as cover for a brief meeting with Auric in the hidden observatory, but Kaelen's eyes were always one step ahead. The council began in routine fashion, but Kaelen's questions were subtly pointed, designed to unsettle. "Princess, perhaps you could share your thoughts on the planetary resource allocations," he asked smoothly, gaze lingering on her with an unsettling intensity. Christy responded with care, choosing words that conveyed competence while masking distraction. She felt the court's attention shift, some with admiration, others with suspicion. Kaelen's slight nods, his faint smile, were tiny daggers of control. Later, when the council adjourned, Christy moved swiftly toward the hidden garden corridors. Her heart raced, not from exertion, but from the thrill of defiance. Auric waited as promised, near the luminescent pond, adjusting the delicate sensors. "Princess," he whispered, relief softening his tone. "I almost thought the council would keep you trapped forever." "Not today," she replied, moving closer. "We have only a few moments. Speak quickly." But before Auric could respond, a sharp click echoed through the corridor, a pressure-triggered alarm hidden among the foliage. Both froze, eyes scanning the shadows. Kaelen's agents emerged from concealed alcoves, cloaked in darkness, their faces obscured by hoods. Christy pressed herself behind Arik instinctively, heart pounding, while the agents moved with silent precision to encircle them. Arik's hand flew to the utility belt at his waist, fingers wrapping around a small device, capable of emitting an electromagnetic pulse. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice tense but calm. "We have to get out before—" The lead agent stepped forward, voice low, controlled. "Princess Oraline and Arik of Mars, you are in violation of palace security protocol. Duke Kaelen requests your immediate return." Christy's mind raced. Escape was possible, but only if they acted together, in perfect synchronicity. She glanced at Arik, seeing in his eyes the same determination that mirrored her own. With a shared nod, they moved. Arik activated the pulse, sending the garden's surveillance drones into temporary blackout. Lights flickered, sensors hummed, and the agents hesitated, caught between protocol and confusion. Christy seized the moment, sprinting toward a hidden exit she had memorized, Arik at her side. The corridors twisted like serpents, their walls reflecting fragmented starlight. But their path was certain. Behind them, shouts and commands echoed, but the pulse had bought them precious seconds. At last, they reached a secondary observatory balcony, high above the cityscape, with the twin moons reflecting in the glass. Panting, Christy leaned against Arik, her heart still racing. "That was too close," she whispered. Arik held her tightly, gaze scanning the shadows below. "Kaelen's game has begun in earnest. We survived this encounter. But the next may not be so forgiving." Christy's eyes hardened, a fire kindling within her. "Then we fight," she said. "Every stolen moment, every shadow crossed. We fight, and we will not be caught. Not tonight. Not ever." Above them the moons glimmered coldly, indifferent to human defiance. Yet in the observatory, in the stolen sanctuary of silver light, the spark of rebellion had been ignited. The celestial spire's corridors were empty now, save for the soft hum of machinery and the distant echoes of guards making their rounds. But beneath the calm surface, the palace thrummed with silent tension. Kaelen's failed attempt to capture. Christy and Arik had left him simmering, and his strategies grew sharper, more insidious. Princess Christy Oraline stood before a vast holographic map in her private chambers. The map, normally used for planetary resources and defense logistics, now detailed the secret passages and hidden exits of the palace, the very arteries through which she and Arik had escaped Kaelen's trap. "Every exit, every shadowed corridor," she murmured, tracing a finger along the glowing pathways. "We need allies. We cannot rely on secrecy alone anymore." Marielle, ever faithful, paced nearby. "You speak of outsiders, my lady?" Christy nodded. "The colonies, Arik's people. They owe loyalty not to the dynasty, but to justice, to survival. If Kaelen is to be outmaneuvered, we will need help we cannot find inside these walls." Meanwhile, in a hidden docking bay far below the palace, Arik prepared for the dangerous liaison. The colony's ships were few, scattered, but efficient. Each one was manned by volunteers loyal to Arik's cause, those who had long sought freedom from imperial oversight. "Princess Oraline's safety is paramount," he told his captain, a woman named Talia, whose sharp gaze missed nothing. "Kaelen's agents have infiltrated every shadow. Tonight, we make contact with the colonies, quietly, carefully." Talia nodded, her fingers dancing over the controls. "They've waited long enough. Let's give them a princess worth defending." That evening, Christy and Arik met again in the gardens, but this time with purpose, not mere stolen moments. The air was crisp, the faint scent of luminescent flora mingling with the ozone of the city above. "Are you certain about this?" Christy asked, her voice low. "If Kaelen discovers we've reached out, he will—" Arik placed a finger on her lips. "I know, but we have no choice. Every step we've taken has been survival. This alliance is our only chance to gain the leverage we need." Christy nodded, resolve hardening. Then we do it, but discretion is paramount. We must appear as subjects, compliant, obedient, while secretly preparing to turn the tide. They descended to the docking bay under the cover of darkness. The colonies' ships waited, sleek vessels designed for both speed and stealth. Christy marveled at the craftsmanship, but her attention was on the people, fighters, engineers, and strategists who had pledged themselves to Arik and now, implicitly, to her. "This is more than rebellion," she whispered to Arik, glancing at the crews. "It's a lifeline, and we are threading it through the eye of a needle." Arik's jaw tightened. "Kaelen will strike as soon as he suspects. We must move carefully, strike decisively, and trust no one within the spire itself." Christy's eyes glimmered with a mix of fear and defiance. "Then we begin tonight. Every shadow, every secret passage, every ally, we use them all. Kaelen will not see this coming." Back in his chamber, Duke Kaelen Vaynar watched the city from his balcony, lips curved in a thin smile. He had sensed the stirrings of forbidden alliances, the whispers of rebellion that now brushed against the spire's walls. "They think they can outmaneuver me," he murmured, voice low, almost reverent in its menace. "They underestimate the web I have spun. Let them move, and I will strike at the heart of their defiance." The twin moons reflected in his eyes, cold and calculating. Outside, Christy and Arik moved like shadows, plotting, risking, defying, and Kaelen waited. The celestial spire, once a symbol of order and majesty, now trembled with the subtle vibrations of impending chaos. From the high vantage of her chambers, Princess Christy Orlane watched the artificial moons drift across the city skyline, their silver glow failing to calm the storm within her. "Tonight," she murmured, voice barely audible over the hum of the palace, "Kaelen will move, and we must be ready." Marielle, ever vigilant, nodded, eyes flicking toward the palace corridors. "He will strike where we least expect it, my lady. Every guard, every spy, he has turned them into instruments of his will." Christy's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we strike first." Far below, in the labyrinthine docking bay, Arik reviewed the colony's fleet. Small, sleek ships, capable of rapid deployment and stealth maneuvers, hummed with readiness. Their crews, engineers, scouts, and seasoned fighters, exuded quiet determination. "This will not be a demonstration of force," Arik told them, voice low, commanding. "Kaelen controls the palace. His spies are everywhere. Our advantage is precision and surprise. Every shadow we use, every corridor we traverse, must be deliberate. One misstep, and the princess is lost." The crew nodded, their understanding silent but unanimous. They had trained for this moment, but none could deny the tension that wrapped around their hearts like iron chains. As night fell, the first signals flickered across the palace surveillance grid. Kaelen's agents had noticed unusual activity in the lower docking bays. The alarms were subtle, enough to alert Kaelen, not enough to cause panic among the general staff. Kaelen stood in his war chamber, reviewing the feeds with cold calculation. "They move," he said softly, almost to himself. "Let us see if their courage can withstand the test of fire." He issued commands with surgical precision, palace security repositioned, certain corridors sealed, and selected agents armed for immediate confrontation. Kaelen's network of spies was a living entity, every node ready to snap at a moment's notice. Christy and Arik moved like shadows, gliding through secret corridors lined with luminescent moss and hidden alcoves. The air smelled faintly of ozone and engineered flora, a subtle perfume masking the metallic tang of tension. "We need to reach the central communications hub," Arik whispered, pointing to a schematic projected on the walls. "From there, we can disable Kaelen's surveillance for a brief window, giving the colonies a chance to move in undetected." Christy's heart pounded, every instinct screaming danger. Yet she moved with measured grace, her mind calculating every risk. "We have one shot," she said. "If we fail, the palace will collapse around us." They reached the hub undetected, But just as Arik prepared to interface with the systems, alarms erupted in a harsh, shrill symphony. Red lights bathed the chamber, reflecting in Christy's eyes like liquid fire. Kaelen's agents had found them. "Move!" Arik shouted, activating the emergency override. Sparks flew as the palace security grid faltered, giving them precious seconds. Christy's hand shot out, grabbing Arik's arm. Together they sprinted through twisting corridors, pursued by the relentless echoes of Kaelen's forces. Each corner revealed a new danger, each shadow a potential trap. Finally, they burst into a hidden balcony overlooking the docking bay. The colony's ships hovered, engines silent, waiting. Christy's eyes met Arik's, determination mirrored. "In both." "Now," he whispered. She nodded, heart pounding. They signaled the fleet. Within moments, small, sleek crafts streaked across the city like meteors, disrupting Kaelen's patrols and drawing attention away from Christy and Arik's escape. The first strike was chaotic, brilliant, and terrifying in its precision. Yet, from the war chamber above, Kaelen's eyes narrowed. His plan had anticipated such a move, but not the audacity of a princess willing to risk everything. "They think they have won a victory," he murmured, voice low, deadly. "Calm, but a true game has only begun." As the colony's ships maneuvered to strategic positions around the palace, Christy and Arik stood side by side on the balcony, catching their breath. The night shimmered around them, silver and electric, with tension. "We survived," Christy said softly, though her eyes reflected the storm inside. "But this is only the beginning." Arik placed a hand on her shoulder, firm and reassuring. "Kaelen will escalate. We have shown him defiance, and he never forgives defiance. But we are ready, together." Above them, the twin moons gleamed, indifferent, yet witnessing the birth of a rebellion that could shake the very foundations of the dynasty. The celestial spire, once a fortress of elegance and order, now seemed to hum with betrayal. Shadows clung to the corners of the grand halls, whispering secrets in the faint hum of gravity stabilizers. Every step Christy Orlin took resonated. Like a drumbeat of warning, Kaelen had begun his counterattack. Princess Christy moved through the corridors, her silver gown glinting in the faint luminescent light. Marielle followed, silent and tense. The palace staff, once loyal, now seemed like strangers with hidden agendas. Trust was a commodity in short supply, and Christy knew Kaelen had infiltrated even her closest circles. "The first strike worked," Marielle whispered, "but Kaelen, he's testing loyalties. There are whispers of betrayal even among your council." Christy's eyes narrowed. "Then we root it out," she said, voice quiet but fierce. "We must know who can be trusted, and who is already lost to him." In the war chamber above, Kaelen Vayner observed the princess's movements, a calculated storm behind his cold eyes. He had anticipated that Christy would rely on internal allies, and he had set the perfect trap. "Loyalty is a fragile thing," Kaelen murmured, watching the holographic feed. "One careful suggestion, one well-placed doubt, and even the closest confidants can turn to my will. Let the princess choose her allies, and watch her falter." He issued subtle commands through hidden channels, a minor sabotage here, a misleading message there, all designed to fragment Christy's network and isolate her from those she relied upon. Christy arrived at the council chamber for a special emergency meeting. The courtiers assembled, their faces a mix of loyalty, fear, and uncertainty. As the princess began to outline the plan for coordinating with the colonies, subtle resistance emerged. "Your Highness," a counselor named Dariel spoke, his tone carefully neutral, "are you certain we can trust these outsiders? Their allegiance, untested." Christy's eyes flickered, sensing the tension. "They have pledged their loyalty not to power or wealth, but to justice," she said firmly. "They are our best chance to survive Kaelen's next moves." Yet as she spoke, she noticed subtle signals, a finger tapping on a concealed communicator. a gaze shifting toward a hidden vantage point. Betrayal was here, inside her walls, and every word she spoke was being twisted. Later that evening, Christy met Arik in the hidden observatory, their safe haven now feeling smaller, more fragile. "They've been compromised," she whispered, voice trembling with frustration. "I can feel it. Kaelen has spies among the council, even Marielle." "I'm not sure anymore." Arik's jaw tightened. "Then we operate differently. The colonies must be our shield, not the palace. We cannot rely on anyone inside these walls." Christy nodded, the weight of leadership pressing on her shoulders. "Every decision, every step, must account for treachery. We cannot fail. Not tonight." Kaelen's plan unfolded with merciless precision. Small sabotage acts delayed Christie's movements. Rumors sowed fear among her council, and carefully timed threats ensured that even her allies hesitated. Yet, despite the palace's betrayal, Christy remained unbroken. She convened a private meeting with a loyal few, Arik, Marielle, and 2 trusted commanders. Together they devised a counter-strategy, using misinformation to expose Kaelen's spies. Every corridor, every message, every shadow became a weapon. "Let him think he has succeeded," Christy whispered, her eyes ablaze. "Then, when he least expects it, we strike back." The first confrontation came unexpectedly. A group of Kaelen's agents attempted to intercept Christy in a side corridor, confident and ruthless. But Christy, anticipating the ambush, led them through a series of controlled traps, doors that sealed temporarily, floors that emitted disorienting pulses, and hidden alcoves where loyal allies lay in wait. By the time the agents realized they were outmaneuvered, they were already surrounded. Christie's calm, decisive command left no room for negotiation. For the first time, the palace witnessed the princess not as a symbol, but as a warrior. Back in the war chamber, Kaelen's mask of composure faltered for a heartbeat. "So she resists," he murmured, lips tightening. "Impressive. But it will not be enough. The web grows, and soon she will be ensnared." Above, Christy stood on the observatory balcony, looking out over the city. The betrayal had been exposed. Her loyal allies were clear, and yet the weight of responsibility pressed down harder than ever. "We survived tonight," she whispered to Arik, "but the war has only begun. Kaelen will not forgive, and neither can we falter. Every shadow we navigate, every secret we keep, must bring us closer to victory." The twin moons reflected in her eyes, fierce and unyielding, a symbol of the defiance that would drive her forward. The celestial spire trembled beneath the weight of an approaching storm, not of weather, but of steel and fire. Above the city, Kaelen's fleet of drones and elite strike units moved with terrifying precision, cutting through the night sky like a swarm of metallic predators. Each vessel reflected the pale light of the twin moons, ominous and relentless. Princess Christy Orlean stood atop the highest observatory balcony, gown clinging to her as the wind tugged at her hair. Beside her, Arik's fingers tightened around hers, a silent reminder of shared purpose. The palace, for all its elegance, had become a battleground, a stage for Kaelen's ambition and ruthlessness. "We knew this would come," Arik whispered, scanning the horizon through augmented lenses. "Kaelen does not forgive. He does not negotiate. He attacks." Christy's eyes glimmered, defiance burning brighter than fear. "Then we fight. Every shadow, every passage, every ally, we use them all. Tonight the spire will witness what it means to defy a duke." Within the palace, alarms blared softly, blending with the distant hum of the assault drones. Kaelen's agents moved like ghosts through corridors, cutting communications and isolating key defenders. His strategy was surgical: confusion first, then precision strikes to seize the spire's core. But Christy and Arik were prepared. The colony's ships had positioned themselves strategically in the lower docking bays, ready to launch rapid response maneuvers. Christy had used the betrayals in the palace to her advantage, spreading misinformation that suggested she had been captured, luring Kaelen's forces into predictable paths. The first clash erupted in the Grand Hall of Radiance, Kaelen's elite. Guards, clad in blackened armor and equipped with energy lances, descended from concealed passages. The loyal palace guards met them with disciplined precision, but the disparity in numbers was brutal. Christy, her silver gown now streaked with the faintest traces of energy residue, moved like liquid through the hall. Every motion was calculated, a step here, a diversion there, directing loyal forces and guiding trapped courtiers to safety. Auric fought at her side, his dual blades humming with charged energy. Together, they became a whirlwind of defiance, cutting paths through Kaelen's elite units, moving toward the central command core where the Duke himself orchestrated the assault. Outside, the colony's ships engaged Kaelen's drones. Small, agile vessels zipped between strikes, disabling drones with electromagnetic pulses and precision lasers. Explosions rippled through the night sky, reflected in the polished glass of the spire like falling stars. Christy's voice crackled over secure channels to the colony captains. Hold the corridors. Protect the exits. Keep the lines open for our allies. Every second counts. The response was immediate. Colonists moved with the efficiency of seasoned warriors, blending technology and cunning to hold the line against overwhelming odds. Kaelen, observing from his war chamber, felt the first stirrings of frustration. "Impressive," he murmured, eyes narrowing. "But chaos can be controlled. Fear can be weaponized. Let the spire burn, and watch the princess falter." He activated a series of internal defenses, turrets that erupted from walls, force fields that sealed exits, and energy nets designed to trap any who ventured near the command core. The palace itself became a labyrinth of danger, and yet Christy moved with unmatched grace and cunning, leading Auric and the loyal few deeper toward Kaelen's stronghold. The climactic encounter came at the palace's central atrium. Kaelen appeared, mask of composure intact, but energy crackling along his armor, betraying his intensity. "Princess Aureline," he intoned, voice smooth and dangerous. "You dare defy me in my own domain?" Christy met his gaze, eyes fierce. "I do not fear you, Kaelen. You may control shadows, spies, and machines, but you will never control me." A storm of energy erupted as Kaelen lunged, his attacks precise and merciless. Christy and Auric moved in perfect synchronization, deflecting strikes, countering with lethal efficiency. Every step, every swing, every calculated maneuver turned the atrium into a dance of light and shadow. Outside, the colonies coordinated. Maneuvers continued, holding Kaelen's drones at bay, giving Christy and Auric a fighting chance to reach the central command core. Minutes stretched into eternity. Sparks flew, energy crackled, and the twin moons bore silent witness to the battle raging within the heart of the spire. Christy's leadership, courage, and tactical brilliance shone through the chaos. Every ally who had survived the betrayals now fought with renewed vigor, inspired by her unyielding spirit. Kaelen's frustration became visible, his strikes growing more desperate, his control faltering. Christy and Auric pressed forward, knowing that the outcome of this siege would determine not only their fates, but the very soul of the dynasty. At last, Christy stood before Kaelen at the command core, energy blades and personal shields active. The Duke's mask of control wavered, the first cracks appearing in the perfect image he had cultivated for decades. "You may have survived the palace, Princess," Kaelen hissed, eyes blazing, "but the war is far from over." Christy's eyes met his, unyielding. "Then let it continue. I am ready." The twin moons reflected in her eyes, fierce and unrelenting, a promise that even in the darkest shadows she would fight and win. The central atrium of the celestial spire was a cathedral of light and shadow, a swirling panorama of chaos and brilliance. The twin moons cast fractured reflections across the polished floors, mingling with the sparks and energy bursts from Kaelen's failing security systems. Here, at the heart of the palace, the confrontation that would decide the dynasty's fate was unfolding. Princess Christy Oraline stood with Auric at her side, their breath steady despite the fury surrounding them, her silver gown now streaked with the residue of energy blasts, shimmered like a second skin, reflecting both vulnerability and defiance. Every step she took was deliberate, every glance calculated, knowing that one misstep could cost them everything. Kaelen emerged from the shadows, his blackened armor etched with glowing runes, eyes like molten steel. "Princess," he said, voice low, resonant, and deadly. "You persist in defiance. Admirable, perhaps, but ultimately futile." Christy's gaze met his, unwavering. "Futile? No, Kaelen. Tonight the shadows will serve justice, not fear." The battle began with a surge of energy. Kaelen's strikes were precise and merciless, a torrent of calculated attacks designed to overwhelm. Christy and Auric moved in perfect synchrony, dodging, countering, and exploiting the smallest weaknesses. Their training, their bond, and their shared desperation made them formidable. "You fight well, Auric," Kaelen sneered, parrying a dual strike aimed at him. "But even the strongest blade can be broken." Auric's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps, but not tonight. Tonight, we carve our path through your tyranny." Christy struck with elegance and precision, each movement a combination of beauty and lethal intent. She anticipated Kaelen's attacks, using her agility and knowledge of the palace's hidden geometry to create openings. Every pulse of energy she redirected chipped away at Kaelen's control, fracturing the aura of invincibility he had cultivated. Meanwhile, the colonies' fleet engaged Kaelen's drones outside, a dazzling display of speed and strategy. Explosions rippled across the cityscape, yet Christy's focus remained unbroken. The battle was not merely physical, it was a contest of will, intellect, and courage. "Princess," Auric called, dodging a flaring energy strike. "We can disable his core defenses if we reach the main console, but he'll fight to the last breath to stop us." Christy nodded, determination hardening in her chest. "Then we draw him in. Every shadow, every diversion, we use them. This is our final gambit." Kaelen, sensing the shift, unleashed a wave of concentrated energy, intending to force them back. Christy countered with a rapid, calculated sequence, redirecting the energy into one of the atrium's structural conduits. The resulting feedback caused sparks to rain like fireflies. Temporarily disorienting the Duke, Auric seized the moment. "Now!" he shouted. Christy and Auric lunged toward the central console, their movements fluid, synchronized, unstoppable. The palace itself seemed to bend to their will as they initiated the override, dismantling Kaelen's control of both the palace defenses and the drone fleet. Kaelen's roar of frustration echoed through the atrium, a sound that blended rage and disbelief. "Impossible! You cannot—" Christy's gaze locked on his. "I am no longer your pawn, Kaelen. The dynasty's future belongs to those who fight for it, not those who fear it." The final confrontation was a ballet of light, energy, and raw willpower. Kaelen struck with every ounce of strength, yet every move Christy anticipated, every counter Auric executed, left him increasingly exposed. Slowly, inexorably, the tide shifted. With one decisive maneuver, Christy redirected a pulse of energy, knocking Kaelen off balance. Auric moved in, immobilizing him with a calculated strike that neutralized his armor's power surge. The Duke fell to one knee, the veneer of invincibility shattered, the atrium echoing with the silence of his defeat. Christy approached, eyes fierce but controlled. "This ends tonight," she said softly. "The shadows you've used to control, to intimidate, to destroy, they belong to no one, least of all you." Kaelen's eyes flickered with rage, then a glimmer of something else. Recognition, perhaps even respect. "You have bested me, Princess," he admitted, voice low. "But remember, even shadows can return." Christy stood tall, the twin moons reflected in her eyes, her chest heaving with exertion and triumph. Around her, the palace, scarred but intact, bore witness to her victory. The colonies' ships hovered silently above, awaiting her command. Arik stepped beside her, voice quiet but proud. "We did it. Together." Christy nodded, gaze sweeping over the atrium, the city, the moons above. "Together," she agreed. "But this victory, it is only the beginning. The dynasty must be rebuilt, and its people must be guided by justice, not fear." The celestial spire, once a monument to fear and control, now gleamed under the twin moons with a softer, more hopeful light. Its halls, though scarred from the siege, resonated with a quiet hum of recovery and renewal. The echoes of battle lingered, but so did the promise of change. Princess Christy Aureline moved through the palace with measured steps, her silver gown now free from the energy-streaked grime of battle. Her eyes, fierce and unwavering, observed the courtiers and staff who had survived the Duke's manipulations. Many bowed, hesitant, unsure if their loyalty could be trusted, but Christy did not falter. She had faced betrayal and fear, and emerged not only victorious, but resolute in her purpose. Mariel approached, carrying a hollow tablet displaying reports from the colonies. "The fleets are in position," she said quietly. "The palace defenses are stabilized, and Kaelen's remaining loyalists have surrendered." Christy's lips pressed into a firm line. "Good. Begin the reconciliation process. Any who are willing to serve the dynasty with honesty, they will have a place. Those who served fear or greed, they will face justice." Outside, the colony's ships hovered in silent patrol, a protective shield that reminded the citizens below of the delicate balance between freedom and power. Arik joined Christy on the balcony, gaze sweeping over the city that had endured so much, yet survived. "They look to you now," Arik said softly, voice carrying both pride and caution. "Not just as a princess, but as a leader." Christy nodded. "I will not fail them, Arik. This dynasty has been built on fear for too long. It is time to rebuild it with trust, justice, and courage." Arik's hand found hers, fingers entwining, and together, he added, "will ensure that Kaelen's shadow never returns." In the war chamber, Kaelen was confined within an energy cell, his blackened armor stripped of its enhancements. He glared at Christy through reinforced barriers, yet his fury had been tempered by grudging acknowledgment of her skill. "You have won," he admitted, voice low and dangerous. "But the game is never truly over." Christy's gaze was steady, unwavering. "Kaelen, the game is ours now. The people will no longer live in fear. Your rule of shadows ends tonight." Even as she spoke, the palace itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, its corridors no longer echoing with treachery, but with cautious hope. The next days were filled with reconstruction and political maneuvering. Christy oversaw the restoration of the palace and the city, personally ensuring that resources were distributed fairly and justice was administered without vengeance. She held councils with loyal advisors, colonies' representatives, and even reconciled former courtiers willing to serve honestly. At night, she often found herself standing on the observatory balcony, gazing at the twin moons and reflecting on the path she had walked. Each moment of fear, every whispered betrayal, every heartbeat in the shadow of Kaelen's ambition had shaped her into the leader she had become. Arik often joined her, silent yet steadfast. Together they planned the next phase, rebuilding not just the palace, but the spirit of the dynasty. "We will honor those who fought beside us," Christy said one evening, "and we will ensure that no ruler ever again threatens this land with shadows and fear." Arik nodded. "Your people will remember this, Christy. They will remember what it means to be led by someone with courage and heart. Christy smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and determination. The war had ended, but the true work of leadership had only begun. She knew that guiding the dynasty, protecting the colonies, and preserving the fragile peace would demand every ounce of her intelligence, strength, and courage. And she was ready. The twin moons shone bright over the spire, reflecting the reborn hope of a princess who had faced betrayal, danger, and ambition, and emerged victorious. Christy Oraline, no longer a mere pawn in Kaelen's game, now held the destiny of a dynasty in her hands, ready to lead with justice, wisdom, and unwavering resolve. The celestial spire had weathered storms of betrayal, fire, and ambition, and now it stood as a monument, not just to power, but to resilience. Its towers gleamed softly under the twin moons, reflecting the quiet brilliance of a city finally free from fear. Princess Christy Oraline walked through the upper gardens, the faint glow of luminescent flora tracing the path beneath her feet. Each step was measured, yet light, as though the weight of the past weeks had transformed into something lighter, a resolve that no challenge could diminish. Beside her, Arik moved silently, his presence a comforting anchor. The air was cool, scented with the engineered blossoms that thrived in the artificial moonlight. The city hummed below, alive with citizens reclaiming their streets and voices after years of silent oppression. They are beginning to trust again, Christy murmured, eyes sweeping over the bustling cityscape. Not just in me, but in themselves, Arik smiled faintly. Your courage has given them that. They followed not just a princess, but a symbol. And you became more than that. You became a leader worth following. Christy's gaze softened, and for a fleeting moment she allowed herself to feel the quiet thrill of victory, not the battle, but the reclamation of hope. Inside the palace, Kaelen remained confined, his blackened armor now stripped of its menace. The energy cell held him securely, but he was alive, watching, waiting. There was a subtle acknowledgement in Christy's mind that vigilance must never fade. Even shadows that had been defeated could linger, yet she did not dwell on him tonight. Tonight she allowed herself a rare moment of peace. The colonies' representatives had been integrated into the palace council, their voices now shaping the policies that would govern the spire and surrounding cities. Orders were executed not from fear, but from logic, wisdom, and fairness. The rebuilding effort was meticulous, and Christy oversaw it all personally. Marielle approached with a dossier in hand, bowing slightly. Reports indicate that citizens are responding well to the reforms, Your Highness. Even previously reluctant courtiers are aligning with the new directives. Christy nodded, a subtle smile playing on her lips. Then our work is beginning to bear fruit, but we remain vigilant. The people must never again fear the hand that guides them. Night deepened, and Christy found herself alone on the highest balcony, Arik's presence lingering just behind. The twin moons reflected in her eyes like pools of silver, and she allowed herself to speak her thoughts aloud. "I've seen what ambition unchecked can do," she said softly. "I've seen betrayal, deception, and yet I've also seen loyalty, courage, and love." Arik stepped closer, voice low and steady. "And that is why you are ready, Christy. Not because you survived the trials, but because you learned from them, and you lead with heart." Christy turned, her silver gown shimmering in the moonlight. "And what of us, Arik?" He took her hands, holding them as he had in the chaos of battle, as he would in peace. "We face the future together, not as soldier and princess, but as partners. We have fought side by side, and now we build side by side." A smile, gentle yet full of unspoken promise, graced Christy's face. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of the crown balanced not as a burden, but as a responsibility she embraced willingly. The city below celebrated quietly, not with revelry, but with the subtle resurgence of life. Children laughing. In the streets, markets reopening, and citizens walking freely, where once they had feared to tread. Every act of life, every reclaimed freedom, was a testament to the perseverance of those who had fought for justice. Christy and Arik stood together, gazing over the city, the twin moons above, witnessing their silent vow. The dynasty, once ruled by fear, had been reborn under a leader who embodied courage, compassion, and wisdom, and yet Christy knew vigilance must remain. Shadows could return, ambition could rise anew, and the delicate balance between power and justice required constant care. But tonight she allowed herself hope. Moonlight ascendant, she whispered softly. The name, a promise to herself, to her people, and to the legacy she would forge. Arik tightened his hold, and together they turned to face the horizon, a new era stretching infinitely before them, bright, dangerous, and full of possibility.